Welcome to Karma Chronicles. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin.
I knew something was off the second I stepped into that boardroom, not just because it looked like a damn movie set with its glass walls and polished floors, but because everyone else was already there, dressed like they were waiting to film a Rolex commercial. Troy didn't even look at me. He was too busy laughing at something Paige whispered, her lips barely moving. She turned her perfect chin my way for half a second, gave me that fake smile squint she's had down since high school, and went right back to ignoring me. I sat down at the far end, across from the lawyer. No one said hi. My name is Claire Donovan. I'm 41 years old. I live in Carlsbad, California. Quick note before we start. Before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. The lawyer, white hair, slick suit, the kind of guy who probably drinks $200 bourbon alone, adjusted his glasses and opened the folder like it was the Ark of the Covenant. By the last will and testament of Walter Donovan, he said, calm as hell, the entirety of the Donovan Maritime Holdings will pass to his granddaughter, Claire Donovan. This includes all vessels, real estate, equity, and remaining liquid assets, effective immediately. Silence. Paige blinked first. I'm sorry, what? Troy leaned forward, smiling like he hadn't heard right. No, seriously. Run that back. The lawyer cleared his throat. It's all there in black and white. The will is signed, witnessed, and notarized. It's unchallengeable under California law. Troy stood up. You're giving the entire empire to Claire. Claire. She hasn't worked a day in the business. She hasn't worked anywhere in, 10 years? She doesn't even own a car, Paige snapped. She's been couch surfing since, God, forever. How the hell is she supposed to run an operation like this? She's not, Troy said, turning toward me. She's just here to collect and crash it into the ground. I didn't move, not a twitch. My palms were sweating, but I kept them folded in my lap. I looked at the lawyer, not them. Claire has no kids, no spouse, no career, Paige went on. She never made anything of herself. Grandpa was slipping toward the end. He didn't know what he was doing. The lawyer closed the folder with a soft thud. Mr. Donovan made this decision well before his health declined. You're welcome to review the dates. Paige shook her head like she was trying to wake up. Troy laughed once, short and sharp, then muttered something under his breath. I stood up slowly, didn't say a word, didn't look at either of them. I walked out like the whole room was already behind me. By the time I hit the parking garage, my phone was already vibrating. Aunt Carol, ignored. 2 minutes later, Uncle Don, straight to voicemail. Then came a number I didn't recognize, San Pedro area code. Claire. The voice was nasal, high-strung. Mrs. Langford. Used to live next door to Grandpa. I just heard the news and well, honey, I'm just shocked. I had no idea you were in the running for something like that. In the running? I asked. She laughed like I'd told a joke. You know what I mean. Are you? Ready for this kind of responsibility? All those employees, that fleet, that name. I hung up. 10 minutes later, another one. Cousin Jenna, then Marlene, my dad's sister. Everyone had the same syrupy tone, the same passive-aggressive concern. Do you have any help? Do you have a plan? Maybe Troy could support you? No one was calling to congratulate me. They were calling to warn me or corner me. And then came Uncle Ray. He didn't beat around the bush. Look, Claire, you've got the title now. No one's arguing that. But I've been in this business since your mom was in braces. You don't know the first thing about dealing with union reps or Coast Guard inspections or EPA audits. I'll figure it out, I said. He scoffed. You don't have time to figure it out. You need someone beside you who knows the structure, the schedules, someone like Troy. You can stay the face of it, of course. Keep the name intact. But if you're smart, you'll transfer part of the ownership to someone who understands operations. I could picture him leaning back in some leather chair, grinning, thinking he'd hit me with logic I couldn't argue. I'm not signing over anything. A pause. That's disappointing, he said, voice cooler. Real disappointing. For someone who's been out of the picture this long to come in and just take. I hung up on him too. After that, the whispers started. He must have changed the will when he wasn't in his right mind. She got to him somehow. She was never around. How did she end up with everything? People who hadn't seen me in 15 years suddenly had theories about how I'd manipulated a dying man. I didn't dignify it with responses, but I didn't have to. Paige handled that part herself. She posted a black and white photo of Grandpa on Facebook, her arm around him from some family BBQ, with the caption, "Class, Dignity, and Legacy. Honoring you properly, Grandpa." Underneath it, details for the funeral, the service, the burial, flowers, everything. Except my name. She hadn't called, hadn't texted. I had no input. I messaged her. M.E. When did we decide this? Paige. I took the lead. I didn't want it to turn into a circus. Me. You didn't think to ask me. Paige. I'm keeping it classy. That's what he would have wanted. That phrase, keeping it classy, hit like a slap. Like she was already spinning the story. Polished Paige stepping up while the drifter granddaughter sat on a throne she didn't earn. I called the funeral home. They confirmed she had paid for everything, arranged the speakers, even submitted the obituary. My name wasn't mentioned once. They were cutting me out of the goodbye. No one said it directly, but the message was clear. I might own the company, but I didn't belong in the family anymore. Still, I didn't bite. I didn't post some dramatic response. I didn't call anyone to fight. I just started making calls of my own. To captains, contractors, harbor masters. I had work to do. Let them talk. They wanted me erased. I wasn't going anywhere. The church smelled like lilies and cheap perfume. One of those old Catholic buildings, with creaky pews and stained glass that filtered the sun into broken colors across the carpet. I walked in just before the music started and slid into a seat near the back. I wore black slacks and a plain blouse. No makeup. Hair tied back. Nothing about me said Donovan. No one turned to look, but I felt it. Heads tilted just enough. Whispers lowered, then picked back up once I sat. 2 rows up, Aunt Carol leaned in close to a woman I didn't recognize and muttered something that made the woman's eyebrows shoot up. I caught the words, "wandered off," and came back for the money. I kept my eyes forward. The urn sat front and center, next to a blown-up photo of Grandpa from 20 years ago, arms crossed, windbreaker zipped to his chin, standing on the dock like a damn king. I remember the day that picture was taken. I was 14. He let me ride along on a fuel run. Everyone else said no. He didn't care. Paige stood at the podium like she was accepting an award. Pearl earrings, tight bun, voice full of syrup. Walter Donovan wasn't just a grandfather, she said, hand on her chest. He was a builder, a leader, a man who taught us what legacy really means. I didn't move. I already knew what was coming. He showed us how to work hard, how to succeed. He raised a family that still leads with those values. I see it in Troy, building something from the ground up. I see it in myself, treating patients and running a practice. I sat frozen. Her voice echoed off the walls like a spotlight burning into my back. He believed in discipline, in action, in family. The last word dropped like a threat. Troy stood behind her, solemn as a statue. His fiancée rubbed his arm and looked down at the floor like someone had just died again. When Paige finished, the priest said a few words, then opened the floor. No one else stood up. I thought about it, just for a second. But I didn't move. I wasn't going to beg for a moment in my own grandfather's service. Instead, I watched from the shadows as mourner after mourner gave me sideways glances. No one spoke to me directly, but I caught their expressions. I knew that look. Pity, mixed with quiet judgment. She was always kind of a mystery, someone whispered behind me. Didn't she drop out of school? I heard she got arrested once. Wasn't there something about drugs? I sat perfectly still, hands in my lap, breathing through my nose. Let them have their stories. That's all they ever wanted anyway. Something easy, something they could explain over wine. Not one of them had called when Grandpa got sick. Not one of them had shown up to the hospital when he had surgery last year. I was there, just not in ways they could see. As the final hymn played, Paige turned toward the altar, arms wrapped tightly around Aunt Carol and Troy like she was the grieving face of the dynasty. She didn't even glance back. I stayed seated until the room started clearing, kept my eyes down, let the tide pass. But something started boiling in my chest, low and quiet like a motor kicking to life underwater. They thought they'd buried me along with him. Thought if they dressed it up nice enough, wrapped it in fake prayers and power suits, I'd disappear from the story entirely. They weren't ready for what came next. I stood up, buttoned my coat, and walked out the side door before anyone could stop me. The cemetery sat on a bluff just south of La Jolla, Wind off the ocean kept tugging at my jacket as I stood near the edge of the crowd, arms crossed, letting the cold bite in. They'd brought out the whole production: canvas canopy, folding chairs, floral arrangements like some influencer's wedding. The urn sat in the velvet-lined box like a prop, waiting to be lowered. I stayed back while the others crowded around it, Paige front and center, clutching a single white rose like she was filming a Hallmark special. One by one, they tossed their handfuls of dirt, Aunt Carol dabbing at her eyes, Troy pretending he didn't see me, the cousins lined up like backup singers in matching black coats. I waited. I didn't move until every last one of them had stepped away and turned their backs. Then I walked up. No fanfare, no speech. Just me and the man who never asked me to prove myself. I reached into the tray, scooped the dry soil in my palm, and let it slip through my fingers onto the lid of the box. "Goodbye, Grandpa," I said low. That's when Paige spun around. "Oh, now you show up." I didn't answer. I stood still, dust still on my fingers. She stormed toward me in heels that sank into the grass. "You weren't there at the service." "You didn't say anything, not a word. It's like you're not even part of this family." I turned my head slightly. "I was there." "In the shadows, yeah," she snapped. "Hiding, like always." People were watching now. Mourners froze mid-conversation. Some of the older business guys narrowed their eyes, waiting to see what was coming. "You didn't even cry," she went on. "Nothing. No tears, no speech. Just silence and a fat bank account. It's disgusting." Troy stepped in beside her. "You could have at least acted like it meant something. Instead, you're standing there like a damn stranger." "I'm not the one who forgot who he was," I said quietly. Paige barked a laugh. "Don't act like you knew him better than we did. You weren't even around. You dropped off the map for what? 10 years, and now you come waltzing in and steal a legacy you didn't earn." I took one step back. "I didn't steal anything." She crossed her arms. "So what is it then?" "He just gave it all to you because you were such a loving, present granddaughter." I didn't say a word. The silence made her braver. "He was confused. You know it. He was losing it at the end, and you took advantage. You saw your shot and moved in while the rest of us were actually here." Murmurs rippled through the group. Someone gasped. Uncle Don shook his head but didn't speak. People were circling in now, like sharks picking up blood in the water. "You conned a dying man," she said, loud, firm, almost proud. That was the line. I looked her dead in the face. The muscles in my jaw clenched so hard I felt it behind my ears. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't lunge or cry or throw anything. I just stared, long and cold, until the fake grief in her expression cracked. More guests started drifting closer, some curious, some horrified. Phones stayed down, but eyes locked in. It was all out in the open now. "You want to know what I've done with my life," I said, still steady. Paige hesitated, just enough for me to see it. I could feel the shift inside me. Not anger exactly, not fear, just clarity. The kind that only shows up when the gloves finally come off. I took my phone out of my coat pocket, turned off silent mode, and scrolled to a single contact. The name said Commander Briggs. She saw it. Troy saw it too. Both of their faces twitched. Then I hit call. The phone rang twice before I hit speaker. "Commander Briggs," came the voice, sharp and gravelly, even through the breeze. I turned the volume up so the whole circle could hear. Paige crossed her arms. Troy stood frozen, blinking like he was buffering. "Sir," I said calmly, eyes on her, "this is Claire Donovan." The silence from the crowd was loud. No coughs, no shifting. Even the priest looked like he didn't know where to stand. "Claire?" The voice brightened just a bit. "Been a long time. You back in town?" "Yes, sir. I'm standing here with my family. They seem to be having trouble understanding what I did for the last 15 years. Mind helping out?" A pause, then a low chuckle. "Hell of a time for a roll call, but sure. You want it straight." "Straight's good." He cleared his throat. "Lieutenant Commander Claire Donovan, United States Coast Guard, retired 2 years ago. Assigned to Pacific Strike Team for Black Market Ops, Intel and Field. Led investigations into smuggling and trafficking from Ensenada to Seattle." Heads turned. Someone behind me whispered, "Wait, what?" Briggs kept going like he was reading from a script burned into his brain. 15 years active. 4 major commendations. Ran point on Operation Deep Current. You remember that one? The container ship ring tied to the cartel. That was her opinion. 2-year undercover detail. She cracked it. Troy blinked faster now, his lips parted like he wanted to speak but forgot how. Paige went pale, arms still crossed but her hands visibly clenched at the elbows. Briggs wasn't done. Medal of Commendation, Meritorious Team Commendation, Achievement Medal for Joint Operations, and a life-saving medal. She's the real deal. He paused. Is there a problem, ma'am? No, sir, I said, looking directly at Paige. Just some confusion. He grunted. Let me guess. Somebody thought you were just drifting. A few people laughed under their breath. Paige flinched. I stayed still. No smile, no satisfaction. Just let the weight settle in the air. Thanks for your time, Commander. Anytime, Donovan. You earned it. I ended the call, tucked the phone back into my coat pocket like I'd just ordered a coffee. The silence was thick enough to choke on. Paige opened her mouth, then closed it. Troy stared at the ground like it had personally betrayed him. I looked at both of them. You never asked, I said. So I never told. A gust of wind blew across the grass, flipping the edge of Paige's coat. She didn't move. No one said a word. I walked away. I didn't even make it past the first row of cars before I heard Paige's heels coming after me. Claire, wait. Her voice cracked, breathless. I kept walking. Can we talk? I stopped. She stood a few feet back, hair blown out of place now, her perfect funeral poise gone. Troy came jogging up behind her, coat flapping open, face flushed. We didn't know, he said, like that fixed anything. You didn't want to know, I said flatly. Paige pushed her hands through her hair. You can't expect us to have guessed something like that. You never said a word. Yeah, I said, because that's how the job worked. It's not exactly something you slap on a LinkedIn profile. Troy shifted his weight. Still, it just caught us off guard, that's all. We were trying to protect Grandpa's legacy. I let out a dry laugh. By calling me a con artist at his grave. He looked down. Paige stepped in again, softer now. We've just always been about building something. You know, making something of ourselves. Degrees, practices, companies. That's what Grandpa always talked about with us. No, I said. That's what you always talked about. Grandpa never gave a damn about what looked good on paper. He cared about results, loyalty, showing up when it mattered. She didn't argue. She couldn't. You post your perfect lives online, you hand out titles like they're candy, I said, louder now. But when it came down to the real stuff, life and death, risk and sacrifice, you weren't there. Troy rubbed the back of his neck. That's not fair. We didn't even know he was sick until... He didn't want you to know, I snapped. He wanted peace, and he knew exactly who to call when things went sideways. Paige blinked hard. He never told us about that either. Because he didn't trust you with it. That one hit. She flinched, then looked away. I looked at both of them. You judged me for not having some shiny job title, for not throwing my resume around at every holiday dinner. Meanwhile, I spent years chasing smugglers across the Pacific. I've pulled bodies out of water you've only seen on postcards. I've been shot at, stranded, and followed home by cartel scouts. Their eyes dropped. I never needed you to understand it, I said. But I'm done letting you act like it didn't count just because you couldn't Google it. Paige's voice came out small. He really chose you because of that. No, I said. He chose me because I didn't ask him for anything. I just showed up. Every time. Troy looked at me, then finally nodded once. Slow. Real. I get it now, he said quietly. Paige didn't speak. She just stepped back, hands still clenched like she didn't know what to do with them. I left them standing there in the wind, surrounded by parked cars and people pretending not to stare. I parked by the chain link gate and killed the engine. The place looked exactly like it did the last time I visited him. Gray siding, chipped paint, 2 flags flapping on the pole out front. The American one and a faded Coast Guard one underneath. He never took it down. The Bayfront house had been Grandpa's escape from the city and from the business. He called it his quiet headquarters. But I knew he still took calls at 4 a.m. from that tiny corner office overlooking the water. Now it was mine. The key stuck a little in the lock, hadn't been used in weeks, but I forced it through and pushed the door open. Same scent hit me as always. Salt air, worn wood, black coffee ground into the floorboards. The house wasn't big, but it felt solid, clean, no clutter, no junk. Just the stuff that mattered. One framed photo of him with my grandmother in '69, a chart of fishing lanes off Point Loma, and a bookshelf full of old logbooks. The back door creaked as I walked out onto the dock. The tide was out. Gulls circled. The wind carried that same heavy smell of old rope and diesel. Some people hated it, not me. I breathed it in like I'd been underwater too long. I leaned against one of the pylons, watching the boats out in the distance. Didn't need a yacht, didn't need to show off. This dock had built an empire, one load of fish at a time. I stepped back inside and headed to the office. The chair still had his back imprint in the cushion. His notebooks were stacked by the window, pen jammed between the pages like he'd just gotten up to grab a cup of coffee. Then I saw it. Center of the desk, a plain white envelope. My name on the front in his thick, slanted handwriting. I sat down before I opened it. The paper inside was short. One line, no fluff. You were always the only one strong enough to carry this legacy. Do it your way. That was it. No speech, no details. Just the truth. My throat tightened, but I didn't cry. Instead, I folded the letter and slipped it into the top drawer of the desk. Then I leaned back in the chair and let it all hit me at once. The silence, the peace, the weight of it. The fact that for the first time in weeks, hell, maybe years, I could breathe. I wasn't a guest here. I wasn't a ghost. I belonged. I was sorting through the breaker panel when the phone rang. Paige. I let it buzz once, twice before answering. Yeah. Her voice was low, shaky, like she wasn't sure I'd pick up. Hey, I hope this isn't a bad time. I didn't say anything, just waited. I wanted to say something. I mean, first, I'm sorry. She let that hang. For the stuff I said. At the funeral? Before that. All of it. I leaned against the wall, staring out the office window. My daughter's been asking questions, she went on. About you. About women in law enforcement, in the military, stuff I couldn't answer. Google works, I said. She doesn't want Google, Paige said, a little sharper. Then her tone softened again. She wants you. I stayed quiet for a second, just listening to the hum of the bay outside. She heard everything, Paige admitted. The way we talked about you. And now she's asking why no one ever told her who you really were. I didn't have a good answer. So now you want me to play role model? No, she said quickly. I'm not asking you to pretend anything. I just thought maybe you could talk to her. Once. Not for me. For her. I exhaled through my nose, rubbed the back of my neck. I'll talk to her, I said, but only if we're clear. Okay. No rewriting the past. No softening the story to make it comfortable. I'm not going to sit there and smile like I'm the weird aunt who just got lucky. I wouldn't ask you to. I'll talk to her as someone who earned her place, every damn inch of it. There was a pause. Then, quiet but real, Paige said, That's exactly what I want. I nodded to myself. When? I asked. I'll call you. She's got a break from school next week. She's nervous. But I think she wants to know the truth. Good, I said. She should. She didn't hang up right away. Neither did I. There was nothing else to say, really. But for once, the silence wasn't full of judgment. It was full of something else. Respect. The sun was bleeding into the water by the time I made it down to the dock. I brought the good bottle, his bottle, the Glenfiddich he kept on the top shelf like medicine. Said it was only for nights when the ocean felt like a friend again. I sat on the edge, boots dangling just above the tide line, and poured 2 fingers into a short glass. No ice, no mix, just how he liked it. The wood creaked under me, the salt air stuck to my skin, and for once, I didn't feel like I had to explain a damn thing. I could still hear him clear as day, gravel voice, always half laughing. You're the only one who gets it, Claire. The sea's not pretty. It's honest. That was the last real talk we had. He was sitting right here, same glass in hand, squinting out at the waves like he was reading some story only he could see. I didn't say much that night. I never had to with him. He knew. Not the full record, not the briefings or the citations, but the shape of it. The kind of life that made you disappear from the photo albums but kept the world turning quietly behind the scenes. He looked me in the eye that night and said, You were never drifting, kid. You were just quiet. I raised the glass now, holding it up to the last bit of sun slipping behind the horizon. To you, I said. To the quiet ones. The ones who do the work, not the bragging. I took a slow sip, let it burn. And to me, I added, because I earned this. The dock groaned under the wind. A lone gull cried out in the distance. No audience, no cameras, no one clapping in the background. Just me, the glass, and the sea. I wasn't anyone's failure anymore. I wasn't someone's lost cause. I was exactly where I was meant to be, and for the first time in a long damn while, I felt home.